I never liked men. To begin with, growing up, boys gradually became my enemies. I started not liking them. We could get along for any other reason other than them being interested in me or anything like that. You see, my parents were married, and from what I can remember, my father was a very hardworking and firm man. He was always out working, while my mother stayed home, took care of the home and children. A devoted and submissive wife she was. I can't remember ever seeing my father laughing. I mean, really laughed, but was mostly looking serious. But with us, his children, a little relaxed sometimes. I never saw my mother going out anywhere or having any friends other than helping on the farm or maybe going grocery shopping or taking us to the doctor or something like that. But she'd always be home. My father apparently traveled abroad, leaving us. At least that's what I understood, and I remember that things became extremely difficult for us after some time. I read a lot, and any book or pieces of literature I could get my hands on, I would read, and was very observant as well. I read stories about men leaving their families behind, and being the child I was, when apparently my older siblings were not paying attention or didn't seem to care, I found out that he was not sending anything to our mother, who had now started going out doing menial jobs to take care of us, and neither did he return. One of the stories I read became my reality. I took on a new phase. I was mostly keeping to myself and just to be reflecting on the times when my father was around. I would cry without anyone seeing. I believed I took much after my father because I was this serious child who didn't seem to find funny what many people around me would be holding their bellies to laugh about. I missed him, but by then my heart completely belonged to my mother. I was around 9 years old. In reflecting, I saw how my father would talk down to my mother all the time. Slave and master situation, I mean. I remembered that I saw more, and now I was putting things together, the pieces from what I had suspected. I used to hear my mother crying, but she would be hiding it. I was observing a lot, and they didn't know I knew something wasn't right. I became angrier and bitter by the day. I became Nancy Drew from the Nancy Drew Mystery series. I found letters from my father to my mother that she hid. I read some of them. He accused her of things I couldn't understand how. Because this woman kept no friends and went nowhere. But I also saw how he had people feeding him lies about her, manipulating him. I discovered that it was all about jealousy of my mother, and I found out also when I was much older about these still miserable women who destroyed our family. I grew nothing but hate for my father and every stupid lying man. That's how I saw them on planet Earth. Every being looking like a man I hated. What was even more hurtful was when I learned how my mother gave up her dream, a brilliant young lady on her way to England to study, for a man who claimed he'd lose her, so let him marry her first. He did, and instantly impregnated her, and hurtful parts continued. Her older siblings, who had by now landed their professions and prepared for her, were determined to try for her even after the pregnancy. The children would be okay, but my father challenged the family about taking his wife and children's mother. I was even further hurt when I went home from school one evening. It didn't take much to see that my mother had been crying, and long too, because her eyes were swollen and her voice wasn't the same. My father had served her divorce papers. I was bleeding inside. I was overwhelmed with fury. I swore to land my profession, but the hate for men was intense. I hated seeing them. I hated their voices and everything about them. The boys in school liked to play around with girls, did come face to face with my wrath. I became a fire-spitting dragon against them straight into adulthood. I wasn't interested in females, never had. Then, all I can say, I can't even explain it. God stepped in. I came out from under the trance. By the time I had my first child, I had a profession, having gone through college, practically fending for myself. I do not give credit to my father for my achievements because I was already headstrong when he was around. What changed was the hate I developed for men. I felt like an outsider because I believed looking at me reminded my mother of my father, apparently. And then my father seemed not to want to bother with me, since when he tried to take me from her, I chose to stay with my mother. So I felt like a nobody's child. Not feeling loved by anyone, going up in adulthood, I went after and gave birth to my first child, where I know love was certain. Now I had someone who would miss me, cry after me, hug me passionately, and brought joy to my life. From then on, a transformation was happening that I still cannot explain, but I knew it was God because He was the only one I had to talk to, for I was alone and hurting. I eventually got married and had my children. The marriage never lasted anyway, but I remained transformed. God is real. Thanks for watching. Please smash the like and subscribe button for more interesting contents. See you in the next video. I'm out.